Hello, everyone. If you are just joining us, welcome to the Education-Led Growth Summit. We have some very insightful sessions planned for you today, and we are so happy that you're here. My name is Audrey Krause. I am the Marketing Programs Manager here at Intellum, and I'm excited to be co-hosting today's sessions with Shannon Howard, who's Intellum's Director of Customer and Content Marketing. So thanks for joining this session. This session is all about how Allied Universal is achieving significant business outcomes through a blended training approach backed by the Intellum Platform. But before we get started, I want to address a few housekeeping items. So first and foremost, this webinar is being recorded. We will have a Q&A session at the end of our conversation, but I encourage you throughout the session to submit your questions to the question box, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. You'll also notice that below the video, there are attachments. So there you'll find that we'll be showcasing the Intellum platform and some of the products that the problems that each of our products solves at an Intellum platform tour next Tuesday, October 8th. So if you want a link to that, it's there in the attachments. You can also click into the case study about Allied Universal. It's also there for you. Also, please notice that if you're looking at the screen and it appears a little bit blurry, the video function will automatically adjust to your computer. So if you want to manually adjust that and readjust the blurriness setting, you can do that. Again, at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little gear icon. Click into that and you can auto-adjust your video there. Lastly, I encourage you to leave us some feedback. So again, below your screen, you'll see a Rate This tab. Feel free to click into there at the end of the session, give us a rating, share your feedback. These sessions are for you, so we want to know what you want to hear from us and how we did. So with all of that said, I want to welcome Brent O'Brien, who has 26 years of experience working at Allied Universal. That's an incredible legacy. So I know, Brent, you're coming to us with a lot of experience and expertise to share. So Brent, to kick things off, can you share a little bit about you, your role, your experience at Allied Universal? In 26 years, you've seen a lot and been a part of a lot. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about you?
Thanks, Audrey. Yes, I will. My name is Brent O'Brien, and I'm out of the Philadelphia area in a little town called Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, just northwest of the city. A little bit about my background. After graduating from college with a bachelor's degree in psychology and wondering, like probably all of you would, what the heck do you do with a bachelor's degree in psychology? I ended up in a couple of different jobs, really 3 different jobs over the course of 5 years. And while I was able to learn from all of those jobs, it was really the third one that introduced me to this thing called human resources, which I had never heard of before. I didn't know what that was. And I was a recruiter at a staffing firm. And so that kind of sparked my interest in this whole HR thing, and decided to pursue a master's degree in night classes before the invention of the online classes. So remember eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, driving from my office at night to class in the evenings. And I remember coming home one night and talking to my wife and saying, I have to, after being at those 3 jobs for 5 years, I said, I have to stay at whatever I get to next. I have to stay there at least 5 years. So I blanketed, there was a Philadelphia News Journal, Business Journal article or page that had the list of the top 20 organizations in the Philadelphia area, along with their associated head of HR. So I blanketed all of them with resumes, had an outreach back from an organization called Spectagard, which is now Allied Universal, and started there and said, again, hell or high water, I've got to stay here at least 5 years. Well, here I am. It's over 26 years later. There have been some challenges, a little bit of hell, a little bit of high water throughout that time, but it's been an incredible journey. Some of the biggest challenges over that year is just the growth. We went from, I started an organization where we had 4,000 employees at the time, back in 1998. We now have 300,000 employees in North America, 750,000 worldwide. So I have global responsibility for all of our training and talent development in the company. And it has been a challenge, but a fun ride indeed. The company's growth, in particular under our former CEO on one of the organizations, Bill Whitmore, and then currently with our chairman and CEO, Steve Jones, have really pushed an aggressive organic growth, growing both by sales and also by acquisition. And both of those also present their own unique challenges when it comes to talent development and training when you're bringing in different cultures. But it's been a great journey, great 26 plus years, and looking forward to more. And so yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That is amazing. Well, you had growth in two places, your own personal journey of going from 5 to 26 years, and then from 1,000 employees to 300,000. That's absolutely incredible. Can you dig into maybe one particular example of a challenge and how you overcame that as you're scaling your training program?
Yes, one of the biggest ones is what I've mentioned is we bring in new organizations, and those new organizations, oftentimes, we went through a few acquisitions where we acquired as many employees as we had in the company. That's hard to do, right? Acquiring a small company and what we sometimes refer to as a tuck-in is a lot easier than acquiring a company where they have a totally different culture, at least a slightly different culture. And we've got to figure out how do we bring those together. And training has been at the forefront of all of that, from the change management, bringing managers and leaders together at the different levels, and then all the way down to making sure that all of those businesses take part in some of the same training programs. Because in our organization, what we put together different academies, and those academies have helped link our employees to the mission, the vision, and what I like to refer to as our core training, or our, if we use some college terms, our gen eds. Right? So every employee goes through some gen eds, and that gets them introduced to the culture at Allied Universal. And what is unique about our business, as opposed to, for example, I know you're sitting in Atlanta today, the great organization Chick-fil-A. In Chick-fil-A, every location, they're doing things the exact same way, right? It's the same training, same products, everything. With Allied Universal, it's totally different. We're providing security services to a variety of different organizations in hospitals, in malls, in high rises, in corporate centers, in residential communities, in government service locations, airports, all over the organization. So what we're doing is we're integrating into somebody else's culture. One of our challenges, back to your question, is making sure that all of our employees still have the core Allied Universal culture at the baseline. We recognize that they're going to take part in somebody else's culture as well. We want to make sure that they're always wearing that Allied Universal uniform proudly wherever they happen to be. And our training has allowed us to move in that direction, especially when it comes to, again, acquiring other companies who are used to something different and integrating them into what we do each and every day.
Wow, yeah, that would be a challenge. And so can you talk to us a little bit about what does that training content look like? I know in your history you've kind of transitioned into this blended training model where you have both in-person and on-demand learning. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we started working with Intellum back in 2009. So it's been 15 years, our 15-year anniversary since we've been working with the organization. Because what we found at that time is we have to scale. So how do we scale to all of it? And in 2009, we probably had around 20,000 employees, if I recall correctly, something like that. How do we scale to these 20,000 employees? We can't do it any longer with just trainers. We have a bunch of incredible trainers out there that do great things, but we can't get to everyone. So how do we get to everyone? The way to do that is through a learning management system where we can push out that content and assign that content back to that academy structure to them. So everyone is taking that, again, those gen ed courses. But the only way for us to scale was to bring in some sort of piece of technology or a technology partner in the case of Intellum that would allow us to touch everyone. And because one of the challenges we faced before that were clients In 2009, we started to bring on more and more what we call our enterprise accounts, those larger accounts where you may have one part of the business in one state and another part of the business in a completely different state. And some of the feedback we're getting is where they're getting a different experience, right? They're not getting the same waffle fries in both states. We need to figure out how do we give them the same waffle fry taste in both states. And as the LMS, what we call internally, we call it the edge, allowed us to do that at the base level. Everyone that's assigned to this particular account, whatever account this is, if it's in this state, and this state, they're all going to get the same content, same feel, same look, same understanding. And that's going to, again, integrate them both into the Allied Universal culture and whatever client culture that is. So I think that was one of the reasons, the primary reason that we needed to scale and move away from just the in-person training, the ILT, which we do a lot of that still. We don't ever want to get away from that, but we needed to blend that with the technology and with the e-learning, and so that's how we've done that, and that of course has evolved quite a bit over the last 15 years.
Awesome. And I'm going to dig into the same waffle fry taste. I love that analogy. But can you share a little bit about how do you ensure the consistency and the quality of the training models now that you do have the technology to do so? What kind of goes in on the back end for that?
Yes, great. So one is the R&D, if you will, before it, like what makes a great waffle fry, what makes a great training course. So we're working with a lot of our subject matter experts. We have so many internal subject matter experts now. Whenever we're putting together a training program, we always rely on operators out in the field who have an expertise in that area. I mentioned a minute ago some of our vertical markets. For example, if we're putting together something for healthcare, we're relying on subject matter experts to look at that, review that, give us feedback on the training that we're providing, so that we are, to use some language that we use internally that's been pulled from other areas as well, making sure that we're developing, whether it's e-learning or in person, what we call learner-centered and performance-based training. Right? And I didn't create that, but that is something that we hold on to very dearly. It's part of our purpose statement as a training and talent development team. Everything we're creating is learner-centered, so not based on what Allied Universal wants to give, but what's going to hit best with that learner. How are we going to, which modality do we need to use to address that particular learner in a fashion that addresses adult learning? And then performance-based. Everything we're building as we're working with those subject matter experts, they're not the experts in training, right? That's our team's expertise. So we want them to provide the content, give us the roadmap, the direction. We'll make sure that it is performance-based, that there's a component or components built within that are going to help those individuals that are taking that training perform their job better, whether they're managers or salespersons or security guards, whatever their role happens to be. They're going to perform better as a result of taking that training. And part of that training, for example, all of the courses that we use on the edge in our Intellum platform have assessments built in. And at the end of each of these, we have knowledge checks throughout, not that unique, but we have assessments at every one of those courses. We track those courses through the system. On the back end, we use another tool. It's called Domo. It's a business intelligence tool to help us identify and then bump that against how are we doing in compliance at each of the particular accounts that we service. And we can also, and we'll get into this, I know, measure that against performance in some of those areas, so that we are seeing that there is actually a performance-based component to what we're delivering. And then with those assessments that we're doing on the back end of the edge, we're able to see where are we missing, like if they're missing certain areas, certain questions, certain content, how do we change that? So we are frequently going back to our content and reviewing it, changing it. We just don't throw it out there and leave it out there. We put it out there and we review it on a regular basis to say, where do we need to change it? How do we need to change it?
Beautiful. I love the all hands on deck approach that you take to that, and really relying on, like you said, the expertise of the subject matter experts. So yeah, let's dig into how do you measure the ROI of your training programs, particularly in terms of its impact on both cost savings and employee retention, and whatever data you can share about that.
Yes, so that, as everyone knows, I suppose most who are viewing this are in the learning community, and we all know that that is the Taj Mahal, the top level. If we can figure out how to measure things, it's not perfect, but we do look at we've simplified it into three different buckets, three different areas, and those are also areas that our team has built into our purpose statement, and that is driving three areas. Again, a first one's a safety mindset, and I'll talk about that a little bit. Second one's a service mindset, and the third one's a growth mindset. So there's three areas across the board are what we are driving, pushing on our training and talent development team, and it's also what we're measuring. So on the safety mindset, what that means to us organizationally is every course that we're delivering training on, it has some component of safety built in there. Even if a trainer out in the field who is training a group on customer service, we expect that trainer to also incorporate safety into that. The importance of vigilance in customer service is not just seeing who needs some help out there, who needs to be guided to somewhere where they look lost, but also that same vigilance equates to where are potential bad actors, where are potential risks in this scenario. We're in the security business, and so that's an important one for us. How do we measure that? There are a few measures that we have in terms of safety. One would be with the couple OSHA measurements out there that we tie to very closely. One's a TRIR, that's total recordable incident rate. And we've seen over the last 5 years a 60% drop in our TRIR, total recordable incident rate. In particular, focused or because of, I think, the result of few areas. We're driving with every employee back to that gen ed, several different important safety components. Everyone's completing something called a job safety analysis, a safety orientation checklist. There are other safety components that are part of every employee at every level's role that they are completing. And that has helped, again, significantly drop that TRIR, which is huge for us. We have clients who ask about that's the first thing they'll ask about in a prospect meeting when they're out to bid. Say, hey, what's your TRIR? Right. So if we don't have that, we're in trouble. And it also is significant for insurance purposes. All right. Another one is our the DAR. That's the days away rate. Very similar. So how many days away is an employee based on, for example, a workers' comp, and that has dropped over the last 5 years, 50%. Similar focus on that safety mindset has helped us drive those two areas down. So that's the safety mindset. The service mindset, what do we tie that back to? That's tied back to client retention. We're in the business of finding new clients and keeping our clients. That's what we want to do. We want to find new clients. We want to keep our clients, keep them really satisfied, make sure that they're happy with our service. And that starts with training, starts and ends with training. Right? So we start them right from the beginning with a couple of courses. Exceptional customer care is one of them. White glove customer service based upon principles from Mickey himself. And every employee gets these courses right up front, recognizing that we are here, all of us, myself included, everybody, to serve others. Our clients are sometimes internal clients, sometimes external clients, but that service mindset is number one for us. And so what we've seen is an increase in improvement year over year in our client retention as we have driven that into all of our businesses, all of our functions in the organization. One of the changes we've made over the last 2 years is a more direct focus on the internal aspect of that. We'd always done pretty well with the external, but what we started to see was you didn't have enough internal. When you're not pressing on internal customer service, you start to lack that collaboration. And when you're missing out on that collaboration, things start to fall apart. You just don't see them as quickly because you're still taking care of the customer at the base level, just not on the back end, and that does impact things. And So we've seen some significant improvement in that, pushing on a few areas. And then the third area is that growth mindset. And the growth mindset, what we mean by that is, we're all familiar probably with Carol Dweck's work on that, fixed mindset versus growth mindset, similar, but what we're focused on is, does an employee see as part of the employee value proposition when they come to Allied Universal that there is an opportunity to grow? And one of the first tools that they are introduced to is the Edge, is our Intellum Platform, where they see several thousand courses that they have access to 24/7. So we don't lock it down. We assign certain courses, those compensable courses we assign to the employees. Again, gen eds, or when they're going out to a specific vertical market, they have to have that specific course. So that's their kind of their major. They get those courses. But then we leave it open so that they can take anything else for their own self-development, because we want our employees to see there's an opportunity for me to grow in this organization. 2 years ago, we created a learning path within the Edge called Leader Identity. And the purpose of Leader Identity was, we gave them, here's where you can fish, right? If you say you want to be a leader, great. You identify as a leader, great. Take this content, show us that you're interested in that. You do that, and it's quite an extensive list of different courses. But upon completing that, then we keep record of those who have completed that, and that becomes a pool from which we search for our next leaders in the organization. And we've had, just last year in 2023, we had over 18,000 internal promotions. And again, it continues to be one of our most significant employee value propositions, is that opportunity to grow from within. So we believe that the measurement behind that isn't just the internal promotions, because as I tell our team all the time, internal promotions, I'm not as wowed by a number, nor should anybody here be. I'm wowed by the product, the value of that person, or how quality is that, a quality promotion from within. That's what we want to see. Is that somebody who has developed some of the skills, and we can continue developing their skills in that role? If that's the case, then what we're going to see, one of the downstream effects will be an increase and improvement in our employee retention, which is what we want to see as well. That's significant in a business like ours. We're a 24/7 business. It's a challenge, similar to retail, food industry. That employee retention is a challenge, that we continue to drive that through that growth mindset that we are pushing with all of our employees, and making sure that they see immediately, as soon as they come into the organization, introduced to, here's the Edge, here's this Intellum platform that you now have access to. You're going to have other opportunities to train and develop as well, but if you want to take some of it into your own hands, get started. So.
That's incredible. And when folks come on board, how often are you engaging with the employees, collecting their feedback, maybe qualitatively, and then asking or kind of tailoring the training content to meet the needs of the employees? Say someone isn't interested in that leadership role, how are you developing that kind of pool of training content? Is it through, the years of experience, or is it through the employee feedback itself?
Yeah, it's both. It's client feedback on what clients are seeing. It's our managers and leaders' feedback on what they're seeing. And it's our security professionals. What would they like to see, both from a content standpoint and from changes in the system? For example, we just put a survey out on our Intellum platform. I think it was in July of this year, and just open it up to anybody. So it's one of the first things they saw when they went into the system, is they saw, I want to hear from you. So we took their feedback, and that was specific to the platform and how we can better serve them within that platform. Every year we run a company survey for all of our employees, and at least 2 of those questions are specifically geared around training and the experiences and opportunities that they're seeing to be promoted and developed from within. So we do often take feedback. A lot of the courses that we create over time are based upon feedback we're hearing from our employees at all levels, and where we're seeing gaps in particular, or not necessarily gaps, but areas of emphasis or focus. So, for example, over the last 4 years or so, there's been a need in an organization like ours to really emphasize de-escalation, because as we know in our world, situations get escalated very quickly, and we wanted to make sure all of our employees were well equipped to de-escalate a tense situation. So a lot of the content that we've put out over the last couple of years has been geared towards that area and building up that skill set in our employees.
Yeah, so trend, what's happening on the ground, you're kind of looking at those things and how you might be responsive to that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So maybe if I could ask, could you share a success story where your training program had a direct impact? You mentioned you've done surveys on operational performance or client satisfaction, where you were able to kind of close that loop in a full circle.
Yes, a couple of them could be related to those safety measures I just mentioned, TRIR or DAR, but I'll give you one. It's related to a leadership program that we have. And this leadership program that we have, actually, I'm getting ready to launch another one next week, and then another one in a couple of weeks after that in Thailand, and another one after that in South Africa. And what we're doing is we're using a bit of that blended approach that you had referenced earlier, somewhat of that flipped classroom. So they're taking courses on the edge first, number of courses spread out over time. Then we're in the classroom with them. Then there's a gap, and they've got some assignments intermodule. So using, again, different modalities throughout. And then we bring them back for a few virtual sessions, and all managed up through the edge. And then we bring them back at the end of generally about a 12-month period for another in-person, where they'll go through more training, graduate from that program. And what we've seen is that's our participants in those cohorts are what we refer to as our high potentials. So we go through a talent management process, talent assessments, talent planning, talent development, and this is that last leg of that stool, that talent development, where we're taking those high potentials and preparing for those individuals for the next level. And what we've seen is 25% over the last couple of years, 25 to 30% of those individuals will be promoted to even a higher level in the organization. They're already at a high level, a higher level in the organization within 12 months, and many more beyond that. And so one of our challenges has been, and one of our success stories has been succession planning. How do we make sure that we are, because as I mentioned, when you grow from, yes, it was a long time ago, 4,000 employees back in 1998 to where we're at now, 300,000 if we just look at North America, we have to have succession planning down well. And our next level leadership program, one of our leadership programs, has helped us to fill that gap and address that need that we had organizationally.
That's phenomenal. So interesting to hear. So I want to turn it over to you, the audience, to ask Brent any additional questions. So again, if you see on the bottom of your screen, there is an option for you to submit questions. Want to turn it over to you to ask those. Go ahead and submit them now, and we can continue the conversation. I'm going to give it just a moment.
While some of those might be coming through, I'll just mention that back to the edge and our learning management system, one of the things we found is we have had to evolve over time, change how that looks, how it feels, not just the content. We talked a little bit about the content, but also how do we get to that content? How do we measure that content? And it requires a partner to be able to do that. We wouldn't be able to do that on our own. So I know this isn't meant to be a commercial for Intellum, but that has been significant for us, is to have a partner who we've been able to work with to evolve over time. We've said, hey, what about this? Doesn't work for us, and can we change this, or this would be nice to have. The organization has been tremendous about working with us to figure out, well, is there another way to do it? Or yes, maybe we can do that. Let's work on that, especially if we have some other clients who might be interested in that. So what I would say is, voice your wish list to the organization, to your vendor, whoever you're working with, and because you never know how many other partners they may have that are asking for that same thing. And when they have enough people who are asking for that, they're going to make the change. They're going to make some adjustments and adapt. And it's been one of the best parts of the partnership over the, again, 15 years. So.
Thanks for that, Brent. We do have a question that just came through in the chat. Can you talk a little bit more about what your organization looks like at this impressive scale? How have you evolved the team structure and specialism over time?
So if the question is my organization, meaning the team that we have on the training and talent development, what we have done is we've focused more of our in-person training out in the field to just our specialized program. So this is how we've evolved in the field anyway, on the training side of it. In the past, we had trainers delivering almost everything. Where we've been able to, we've taken a lot of the standard and just made that, either put it on the edge or some other, actually most of it is on the edge right now. And then taken what has to be done in the classroom. For us, it's things like handcuffing and pepper spray and management of aggressive behavior, firearms training, those type of things where we need an in-person trainer. And we've focused their attention really just on that area and then on compliance, and taken some of those standard programs and figure out how do we use, for example, in CPR, a blended approach. So we use a completely blended approach with the edge, where all of our employees are taking part one on the edge, and then they have all of that down, and then they go back into a classroom with one of our instructors, certified instructors, and they're really just doing what's called the skills session, just showing that they can demonstrate how to use that AED, how to do compressions and breaths, some of the first aid pieces of it, not the training piece of it. So it shortens that time very significantly because they've done the rest of it on the edge, on the learning management system. So it's one of the ways that we've shifted and evolved internally as a team.
Thanks for that. And again, just want to encourage you all to submit your questions as they come to mind. Another question is, how do you ensure continuous improvement and innovation in your training initiatives?
Feedback is the primary. We talked a little bit about that earlier, but it's feedback from our users. So what are we hearing from our users? That's number one. And we do look at that feedback. We also, as I mentioned earlier, we are reviewing the assessments. That's why we have a test at the end of every training course that we have, so that we can see what are they getting, what aren't they getting. If they're not getting something, it's not their fault. It's usually our fault. It's usually because we didn't set it up right. We didn't develop that piece of that training the right way. So let's see if we can refine that and improve that. That's so two areas. One, feedback directly from the user. Two, the assessments. And the third one is, we have this other area that can give us feedback, and those are our clients, right? And they could say, hey, your employees aren't doing this well, or they're not doing that well. They're struggling with report writing. Okay, let's go back to the basics of report writing. Let's do, again, flipped classroom, make sure everybody takes this course on the edge first. Then we'll get somebody in there that train them so they understand the components and most important pieces of report writing. But that's the third area is from our external, our clients. We'll get feedback from them.
Amazing. Yeah, you really got to go to the learner themselves to know what they need. Okay, last question. What strategies have you implemented to ensure the scalability of your training program across such a large workforce, and really large, just global? You've already mentioned Thailand and South Africa are your next initiative. So yeah, can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, as we all know, I think it doesn't start here. It's like I don't create the strategy. The CEO creates the strategy. It's my job to make sure I am intimately linked in, our job to make sure we are intimately linked in to the strategy of the organization. That's where it starts. So if I create my own wonderful little strategy in training and talent development, but it's not aligned with where the CEO and the organization are going, then I'm going to miss every time. So what we're doing is I meet regularly with the CEO and the chief administrative officer and ensure that I'm tuned into, we have regular meetings, leadership meetings anyway, to all of the strategies, strategic areas of focus in the organization, whether they're changing year to year or sometimes quarter to quarter. Some components do. Most are longer term, over a year or 2 years, and most in our organization don't change significantly. But that's the key is, for example, I mentioned a few of them. 3 big ones are safety, and keeping our keeping our employees safe. That's what's most important. But there's a second part of that, which is also there's a huge cost behind unsafe behavior, workers' comp and otherwise, right? And then client retention, that's always going to be part of our strategy. It's always going to be something that's driven by our CEO and other leaders. So how do we support and how do we make sure that our training and everything that we're communicating from our side of the business is supporting that piece of it? And then that third one is the employee retention. That's a huge part of so it's not just client retention, it's employee retention. Our clients seeing the same faces day in and day out because they want to. They trust, they're more confident when they see those same faces day in and day out. So how do we make sure that we're building content, building a platform, our strategy in our side of it on the training and talent development side is aligned to support that area? That's the key for us. If we do that well, then and we stay connected to those leaders in the organization, one, we get their support and we're able to also share back with them, hey, here are some of the successes we've seen, and they love to see that, and they'll keep feeding us the strategy and letting us run with some of the particulars on how to execute it.
Sure. Well, it sounds like you have a very well-oiled machine, and I know that there's been an incredible amount of learning and, like you said at the start, challenges that you've overcome over the last 26 years. Before we close out, just curious if you have any last tidbits that you want to share. If not, I'm going to turn it over to the audience and share some last-minute items before we close up here.
Yeah. We're not perfect. We're definitely not perfect. We've got a long way to go. And I think that's a starting point, is recognizing that there is opportunity to grow and get better. And we challenge ourselves, each of our team members here, to grow on a regular basis. So we have team meetings, and they're about, at the leadership side of our learning and development team, training and talent management team, about 15 individuals. And every quarter we're reading a book. It's one of the things we do. We read a book, and we don't just read it. Every week when we're meeting, then I have questions, or we have questions that we're going to answer from whatever we've read. And it's just our way of growing. And we're in this year of the year of serve. Last year was our year of teach. The year before that was our year of lead. So that means that all the books that year are focused on leadership, or 2 years ago or last year on teaching, becoming better teachers, better trainers, and this year all about service and customer service. I mentioned earlier our focus on, in particular, that internal customer service. So keep growing. We should be the ones setting the example in our positions of what that growth mindset really means.
What a cool practice to be able to learn alongside your team and be able to share and exchange new ideas and learn from others. That's amazing. Well, thank you, Brent, so much for joining us today. And like I said, sharing your insights, experience, expertise. I'm sure, like me, many of us have learned something new today. So really appreciate you sharing and spending your time with us. So thank you so much. For those of you who do plan to join us in the next session, you'll be hearing all about best practices for building certifications. And like I mentioned at the start of the call, don't forget to check out the attachments. You can learn more about Allied Universal in their case study and rate this session before jumping to the next. So we'll catch you all in the next session. And again, Brent, thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
Thanks, Audrey. Thanks, everyone.
All righty. Take care.